guys hear me okay out there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Well, it really is a pleasure to be back here with you all. I started working with IANDS, I think, 3 years ago, and I played at the National Convention, and then Chuck Sweetrock from Phoenix brought me out there to Phoenix and Tucson, and I had some great experiences out there. So I just want you to guys imagine it's 1,000 years ago. And imagine there's an Indian man in India, and he's out on a hunting trip, and he falls off his horse, hits his head, goes into a coma, and his heart stops beating for a while. Okay? So after 6 or 8 hours, he comes back to life, and he tells all of his friends and family, I met Krishna in heaven. He had this blue aura around him. He had all this love coming from him. And so now from that point forward, his whole family, and him especially, really believe that Krishna is the only agent of God. Because on their continent, all the other people have all been brought up with this teaching that has to do with Krishna. And so they all assume that Krishna is the only agent of God. Well, 2,000 miles away in another continent, in China, another young man is on a hunting trip. He falls off his horse. He hits his head. He goes into a coma. His heart stops beating. When he comes back to consciousness, he explains to all of his friends and his family that Lao Tzu appeared to me. He had this bright light around him, this beautiful aura. He connected me with some of my relatives in the heavenly dimension. And Lao Tzu must be the true only agent of God because he met me in heaven. And because where he lives is so separate from the guy from India, these guys on 2 different continents believe that the ascended master who met with them in heaven is the only one. So this happens all over the world, but after 1,000 years, we have this new thing called the internet, where people can share their experiences, right? And so people on all the different continents, whether they believe in Krishna, or Moses, or Lao Tzu, or Jesus, or Buddha, people all over the world are having experiences with the ascended master that they're most connected with, the one that they believe in. And so now it's possible for people to share their experiences through the internet, to find out that the guy in India who had his experience with Krishna, his experience was almost identical to the guy who grew up looking up to Buddha, and the guy who grew up looking up to Jesus, and the guy who grew up looking up to Lao Tzu. We all have these experiences, and it really doesn't matter which ascended master appears to you, because they're all at this high level of consciousness, and they're all able to teach us, they're able to heal us, and they're able to be our friends. Now, the silly thing about humanity is that we miss the point that the fact that there are other religions that are valid. You know, because we grew up with this thing, this black and white thing. You know, you go to this church, you go to this synagogue, you go to that temple, and if you go to this one synagogue, you're not ever walking into that other temple. Right? But the thing is, in the heavenly dimension, as most of you guys know, because you've had near-death experiences here, in the heavenly dimension, everything is connected by this magical thing that's called oneness. Okay? And so when you're in that dimension, whoever you think about while you're in that dimension appears to you. Because things are a little bit simpler in heaven than they are here on earth. Okay? There's no higher or lower. There's no point trying to figure out, well, gee, is Buddha higher than Jesus or higher than Moses? Or how do they all, who's the highest of all? It doesn't matter. Because if you said to somebody, do you think the guy who has $117 million, do you think he's any happier than the guy who has only $116 million? It's so much money. It's such a gigantic abundance of money. How can you even compare the difference? So to try to compare the difference of the knowledge and wisdom between Buddha and Jesus and Moses and Krishna and Mother Mary and all the other ascended masters, it's pointless because they're all connected to the same team. They're not separate. They're not in competition. They don't care if you put your $20 in this church or this synagogue or this temple. They really don't care because they're all connected by this oneness. And that great love that they all have is what they want to share with us. And when we have a near-death experience, we get a bigger taste of what that tremendous universal love is. Now, has anybody here not had a near-death experience before? Okay, wow, look at that. Well, you know, you're in the right place because if you want to know what heaven really looks like and feels like, you talk to somebody who's had a near-death experience. You know, it's really simple. If you think about life as like an hourglass, where the bottom part of the glass is this physical world, and the top part of the hourglass is the heavenly world. The sand interacts between the heavenly world and the physical world, and then you turn it over and it goes back. That's kind of like the way reincarnation works, to tell you the truth. Okay? But my point about this is that we can interact with the heavenly dimension. A lot of times we're doing it, we don't even realize that we're doing it. And many times, our loved ones in spirit are looking down into our world and they are trying to give us guidance. Now, one of the things that most people misunderstand about what's known as intuition is how it works. Because in all the books that you can buy on intuition, it all says that our soul gets message directly from spirit. Because that's what we're all taught. But what I have found out and experienced myself is that between spirit and us as soul are our guides. Our guides are a combination of our loved ones in spirit who are in the heavenly dimension, along with different angelic beings, and along with some ascended masters that we each are connected with. So because they're in the spirit realm right now, they get the information before we get it physically, mentally, or through our soul. They get the messages first. They can see what's coming up in our life because they're in the spirit realm. The messages come from spirit to our spirit guides, and from our spirit guides down to us. That's really the way it works. Okay? So, I'm sure you've all had an experience where you've thought about somebody that you hadn't thought about in 20 years. And 5 minutes later, they call you on the phone. And you're all freaking out. Oh my God, I was just thinking about you 5 minutes ago. I can't believe you're calling me now. That is because your spirit guides were giving you that message. Hey, do you remember that person from 20 years that you hadn't heard from in all this time? And you're thinking it's your own thought. That is the message that your guides are invoking in your mind, so you think it's your own thought. And then 5 minutes later, your friend from 20 years calls you up and you think, wow, how did that happen? Right? Or I'm sure you've had the experience where you're walking down the street, and let's say the store you're going is on the right side of the street, and you've got this nagging feeling telling you to go on the other side of the street for no reason. Now your logical mind is going, I'm not crossing the street, I'm going to someplace on this side of the street. But you keep getting this thing, no, you gotta cross the street right now. And it's like, you argue with it, because that's what we do, right? Because it's not logical. Eventually that nagging feeling gets so strong that we cross the street. It's like, oh, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I'm just gonna cross the street right now. So you cross the street, you walk by a store, you see a friend you haven't seen in 30 years. That magical moment that you had only happened because you did not trust your logical mind. You had something telling your soul, cross the street right now. And you know what your loved ones and your spirit guides are doing on the other side in the heavenly realm? Woohoo! Woohoo! We did it! He crossed the street and look at that wonderful thing, look how happy it is. And they celebrate. They have a big party. You know, they party in heaven. They do everything that we do. Yeah, they honestly, they do. I do these events that are called the portal between heaven and earth. And Today is my 359th event that I've done in 3 years. And I've learned so much from just coming to my own events, to tell you the truth, because when I started doing these events, I didn't even know it was possible to experience what people share at my events every single night. Because when I started doing these events, I'd been meditating for 30 years. I had seen the purple light in my inner vision. How many people have seen the purple light in their inner vision? Okay, quite a few. How many people have seen the white light in their vision? Okay, so the white light wins today. And I was hoping, when I would play these flute meditations for people, I was hoping that people would experience the white light or the purple light. You know? And I was shocked beyond belief after a meditation that I did in 2014, because that's when I started doing these events. Because before that, I played music at art festivals, spa conventions, healing conventions. Hospitals like Johns Hopkins Medical Centers have entire floors of only my music that they play 24/7, because I feel like it's the most healing music on the planet. The Mayo Clinic has 2 television channels with my music on all the time, so people can listen to that while they're healing, you know. So that's what I did up until 2014. In 2014, I had a book that came out. I started doing events talking about my book. And then I would say, after talking about 45 minutes, I would say, okay, everybody close your eyes. I'm going to play the flute for a little bit. Let's see what happens. So I was expecting and hoping that people would feel some inner peace, maybe see the white light or the purple light, you know, because that's what I've experienced over 30 years of meditation. So the first woman said, my grandmother showed up to me while you were playing the flute. And she brought me to heaven, and she introduced me to a whole bunch of relics I didn't even know existed in heaven. Now, when you're in the front over here, you're supposed to kind of be in charge, right? And can you imagine how shocking that would be for me to hear that when I didn't even know it was possible? And then the next person who shared said that her husband died in 9/11, and it had been 13 years since he crossed, and she never had closure. And I started playing the flute. Her husband showed up to her, told her that he was happy, he was in a wonderful place, she doesn't need to worry about him. He's at peace. He wants her to be in peace and live out the rest of her life to find as much happiness as she could possibly find. I had 5 people share an experience like that at the first meditation. Now, I had been talking to a famous channeler from Canada whose name was Bob Murray, who was helping me to explain why all these magical things were happening with my music. And I explained to Bob, I said, you know, I could see over the heads of the people in the back of the room, I could see these light bodies. They were in the shape of humans like us, but they were made out of light. And who are these light bodies, and what is it? And he was able to explain to me that when these events are set up, it looks like I'm setting these events up myself physically, right? But because of my interaction and my partnership with the Ascended Masters and the Archangels, the light bodies that you're seeing in the back of the hall are the souls of the relatives or the friends, the people in the audience. And they are bringing these souls to connect with you guys here in the events while I'm doing my flute meditation. And from the time I started doing these events, I always saw these light bodies in the back of the room. You could call them spirits, you could call them ghosts, but you know, ghosts has another connotation. I think it's better just to call them our loved ones, you know. And so I started doing these events in 2014, and at this point, over 4,500 people who look just like you guys have had an experience with one of their loved ones at one of my events. And another 2,000 people have had an experience with Jesus, or Buddha, or Krishna, or Moses, or Mother Mary, or Gandhi, Archangel Michael, Archangel Metatron, any of the Ascended Masters of every single religion on this planet. They are all friends. They're not in competition. They help each other. There have been people at my events who said they had experience with Buddha, Jesus, Yogananda, and Krishna. Can you imagine having a conversation with the 4 of them? You know what that's called? Normal. Because that's the normal I live with now. It wasn't normal in 2014 when I started doing this, I'll tell you. When people started sharing those kind of things, my logical mind didn't know what to do with that information. But over time, I just got used to this. And so that's part of my normal. So these instruments that I play, they're not nearly as expensive or beautiful as the instruments that Diane plays, and she does play so beautifully. These are plastic, in case you're wondering. This one only costs $10 if you want to get started. You know, you want to start doing your own events, your own portal between heaven and earth events, and see how it works for you. But this one is called the soprano, and the next one is called the alto. The next one down here is called the tenor. And then this one over here is called the bass recorder. That happens when you play two of these instruments at one time is that the two separate notes create a third note. Okay, so it sounds like a zzz. But when they're together, zzz, let's see if you can hear that. Can you hear it? So that's a frequency. So it's not a physical frequency. It's a spiritual frequency. And that frequency exists in the heavenly worlds. And when people have near-death experiences, they see the light. It comes in all different forms, and they also hear this heavenly music. And the reason why I'm asked to play at the IANDS conferences is because when people hear my music who have had a near-death experience, they normally say that the closest thing they ever heard to that sound in heaven was the music that I play at these events. Okay? So I'm going to say, why don't you all get really comfortable, because I'm going to guide you through a meditation right now. Okay? So I don't know how comfortable you can possibly get in these things here. If you want to lay down, you can lay down. If you want to sit, you can sit. But please make sure that your cell phones are off completely. Because once you get there, there's no point coming back here because somebody left the phone on. And before we do, does anybody want to ask me a quick question before we start?
How come your mouthpiece is upside down?
Okay, you want to know why my mouthpiece is upside down? Most of the sound comes out of this part. And so the normal way that you play this is like this, so the sound comes out of here. But when I turn it around like this, then the sound comes out of the hole, goes into my microphone. Anybody have spiritual questions? I don't want this thing to be knocking over here, so I'm going to put this like this over here. Anybody else want to ask a quick question? Okay, in the back.
Is the vibrato electronically produced somehow, or is that just coming?
Do you mean the reverb or the vibrato?
Vibrato.
Okay, the vibrato, that's, when Diane was playing, she has a beautiful vibrato. That's how you make it. This is the difference between That's a note, and this is a note with vibrato. Yeah, so that comes from in here. Okay. Anybody else with a short? Okay.
What are you gonna be playing us right now?
What am I going to be playing? I have no idea what I'm going to be playing. Well, being that I'm going to do this guided meditation with you guys, I'm going to play to my CD that's called Creation. And Creation was, there are two people who were in the movie The Secret that use this CD as their meditation music in their workshops all over the world. So if you'd like, close your eyes now, okay? Take a couple of deep breaths. I want you to think about this as a spiritual adventure. In your happy place, inside your heart. A chance for you to experience your soul. So see yourself standing on a beach on a perfect day. Take a long, deep inhale through your nose, smelling the ocean air in your nostrils. Rock back and forth between your heels and your toes, and feel the sand rub against the soft part of your foot. Take another long, deep inhale, smelling the ocean air in your nostrils. Now as you look out over the water, off in the distance is an old ship with large white sails. And it's heading in our direction. Some sand, straighten out your back, and now rub your hands together and feel the sand rub against the soft part of your hands. And watch it just float down by your feet. Take another long, deep inhale, smelling the ocean air in your nostrils. Steps forward. And with your right foot, write your name in the sand. Take another long, deep inhale through your nose, smelling the ocean air in your nostrils. Now take 3 steps forward again. 3 steps to the left, and all capital letters, write the word love. When you're finished, look out over the water. You can see that the boat is quite a bit closer. And just take another deep inhale through your nose, smelling the ocean air. Feeling the ocean breezes go right across your shoulder, right through your hair, right through your heart center. Now start walking down towards the water, but don't go in the water yet. And feel how the moisture increases as you get closer to the water. Look down by your feet and watch the waves end close to your feet, and then watch the water just disappear into the sand. As you look out over the water again, you can see the boat is pretty close. So So now step into about 1 inch of water. And feel that cool sensation around the side of your foot and the back of your ankle. Now take 1 step further out into the water. And now I want you to kick the water so you can hear the splashing sound. It's important that you can hear that splashing sound. Because that sound triggers your joyful childhood memories of being carefree, happy, not a care in the world. Just play with that water with your feet. Now look out over the water. The boat has now got a rope lowered down, 2 ropes connected by wooden steps. Start walking out towards the boat and feel the water rise up to your ankles. Feel it rise up to your knee. If you like, you can step on top of the water, walk across the water, get to the boat, put your feet on the bottom step. You're just hanging here for a little bit. Squeeze the ropes with your hands. Feel the waves gently moving the ladder that you're on. Take a long, deep inhale through your nose. Smelling the ocean air in your nostrils. Start climbing the ladder. And when you get to the top, someone is waiting for you. does anybody have anything that they experienced during the meditation that they would like to share with anybody, or that they would like to ask because they don't understand what was in their experience? Does anybody want to ask or share anything from their experience over there? Okay, so let's we'll pass. We can pass this back to you so everybody can hear.
I'm pretty loud.
You are?
Everybody can hear me?
I can hear you pretty good. Okay, go for it.
Well, here's what happens. You start playing and you tell us to get up to the top of the ladder. And
Right,
you say to get onto the boat.
right,
And you say someone's meeting us there.
right.
But you don't say who.
Uh-huh.
My curiosity is I'm wondering as I go over.
Okay.
And I see the face of my mother who passed away just a year and a half ago. And what happened was, I had tears that came, not from boo-hooing, my eyes just started to cry, just started to water. And it brought back a conscious memory of when I saw her a month or two before she passed away, where she took her thumb and she wiped under my eye, as if I had had a tear there. But I didn't. But I did today. And that's where the first drop came down. All I have.
Well, the reason why, thank you for sharing that, and the reason why I don't say who's going to meet you at the top of the boat is exactly for that. So this way, whoever spirit has lined up to greet you at the top of the boat, I don't get in the way of it. See, my job is to set it up with there to get all of your senses, your smell, your sense of feeling with the air, your feet touching the sand, everything. So this way, when you get to the boat, you're so involved in that world that you forget that you have this physical body that's in this physical world. That's the whole point, is to get you there to the boat. I had this woman share an experience that I thought was pretty hilarious, because she said it was her first meditation. She never tried meditation before, and her best friend brought her to the event. And she said that God just picked her up and just took her all throughout the galaxies, and she got to see how every world was created and how every galaxy, and she went on for 10 minutes sharing her experience with every adjective you can imagine. And then she got to the end and she said, but I didn't see the boat. Anybody else want to share an experience or ask me anything about the experience that you had, or ask me about anything? Okay.
I
You want the
didn't see,
microphone?
no, you can hear me, can't you?
Yes.
I didn't see a white light, I didn't see a purple light, I kept on waiting for someone to show up. And then all of a sudden I started having these like wild and wacky, like situational, like scenarios that were sort of based on my life and weren't. It didn't feel spiritual at all, and I was sad.
So these scenarios, is this something that's been on your mind today or recently?
They seemed, I almost can't remember them right now. They seemed related to my life, but I can't really tell you what they are now, because they're already fading.
Well, you know what? I guess these things that have been troubling you are really not that important to you, because you can't remember right now.
Okay, I'll take it.
The whole idea, when you go into meditation, and we all have stuff that, gets in our way with our minds and stuff, but what you really need to do is you need to try to just leave that behind you, so you can have an experience in that dimension without thinking about the things that are troubling you in your physical world, in your physical life. It's easier said than done sometimes, but that's the whole thing, to get just so focused on the heavenly dimension, or on whatever you are choosing to want to experience, because, see, in the heavenly dimension, there's a different set of rules than we have in this physical dimension. Like in this physical dimension, you could be thinking about something that you'd like to have, but at this moment, you don't have it. But in the heavenly dimension, whatever you think of manifests instantly. Because in the physical world, we have molecules and atoms, right? And it's a different form of manifestation to manifest atoms and molecules. But in the heavenly dimension, everything is made out of light. Different, varying degrees of light. And it's easier for light to manifest into something because there's no molecules or atoms in light. You know what I mean? And so when when people have near-death experiences, they say, wow, whatever I thought about, I was right in front of me. So if I thought about Mother Mary, she was right there. If I thought about my grandmother, she was right there, because they don't have molecules and atoms in heaven. Everything, it's just easier for things to manifest there. You know?
It was either Sai Baba or Mary Baba that in India, that he could materialize things, because thoughts are things and things are thoughts.
Yeah. Well, do you want to share that with us here?
Yeah, it was either Mary Baba or Sai Baba in India, where he could manifest like a strand of pearls or whatever, and because thoughts are things and things are thoughts. They instantly materialize those things. And where people, their son lost his arm and he meditated for a long time and his arm grew back, things like that. But I wanted to ask you, what is the highest form of music that brings us the divine? Is it the music of Bach, the music of Schubert, or Beethoven? Because the music gets...
Music of David, yeah.
Is there any music that is so uplifting that it's a mirror of the other side?
Well, I think classical music is, it's on a little bit different level. I wrote this thing up that I put on Facebook, but when you have earthly instruments, they have an earthly vibration. So when you hear a piano, most of the time when people hear a piano, it instantly brings them back to their aunt's house who had a piano in it, or to like their own home if they had a piano in their own home. The idea about meditation is that you want to have sounds that are not earthly, because the earthly sounds remind you of earth. You want to have heavenly sounds, like somebody dropping their silverware over here. Like you hear dropping silverware, you're instantly going to think you're in the kitchen. So classical music, even though there's different ways that you can orchestrate classical music, and I'm sure a hardcore classical musician would disagree with me, but to have heavenly sounds, it transports you in your head to a heavenly sound. Like one of the examples that I use with people is that everybody in this room has been to the beach before. Is that true? Has anybody not been to the beach ever? Okay, so everybody's experienced that. So when you go to the beach, you see what the beach looks like, and you hear what the ocean sounds like, correct?
Yeah.
So what happens if you put on some headphones that have ocean waves on it? After 10 minutes, you're starting to see ocean waves in your inner vision, because your mind knows that the sound of the ocean accompanies what the ocean looks like. Does that make sense? Okay. And these sounds that I make with the flutes and with my effects and stuff have that heavenly sound and the heavenly vibration. So when your soul hears that, your soul naturally knows, oh yeah, I hear that sound when I'm in heaven, when I'm sleeping, or when I had an out-of-body experience, or when I had a near-death experience. You know what I'm saying? So, what do you think about that for an answer, without saying that my music is the best music?
Your instruments are earthly instruments, huh?
Yeah, these are earthly instruments, but the way I put these effects and these other sounds on it, these effects like reverbs and echoes and all this stuff, that's what gives it that heavenly sound. Now, I want to tell you that the flutes that I use, these are plastic. I have wooden flutes. I don't like the sound of the wooden flutes because they sound more earthly. To me, these sound more like a synthesizer in a way, which to me is more heavenly. Somebody else? Okay.
Thank you, first of all, for that amazing guided meditation. You mentioned that in heaven, beings are composed of light. And just a moment ago, you mentioned our inner vision. How should we interpret the lights that we may see during these meditations?
Well, there's different levels of heaven. If somebody said to you, I'm going to go to Earth tomorrow, and they've never been to Earth, and they're going to say, what does Earth look like? Well, you would say, well, Chicago looks completely different than the Amazon jungle, and that looks completely different than the Sahara desert. So heaven has just as many variations as Earth has. So there's different colors of light that are associated with different levels of heaven. And also, the different ascended masters also have a light, you know, like Saint Germain, when he shows up, he always has that violet color that he shows people, you know. And it's kind of interesting, but, you know, sometimes when I'm playing the flute, as you guys are meditating, I will see this little violet star over people's head, and every single time for the last 359 events that I've done that, anytime I've seen that violet star over someone's head, that person raises their hand and says, I just had an experience with Saint Germain. You know? Jesus and Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary, they always have that bluish, that royal blue color in their light. You know, I mean, they can change their colors of light, but the thing is that they want to make it as easy as possible for us to make the connection with who they are. If you have an experience where, let's say, where you smell a scent of a cigar, and you don't understand why, and then I would say, well, do you have a relative that used to smoke a cigar? And you say, yeah, my grandfather smoked a cigar every day of his life. Your grandfather will use that scent to connect with you to make it easier for you to believe that it's him. And if you go to a psychic, and your psychic says, wow, I'm smelling cigars over here, you know what I mean? That would be a connection. Or a psychic may say, well, I'm seeing a fireman's hat. Does that mean anything to you? You know what I mean? And you say, yeah, my dad was a fireman. You know, there's always a reason, and they do whatever they can to make it easier for us in this physical dimension to accept it and feel comfortable with it. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say.
I'm wondering if these are times of a lot of yelling at each other. A lot of
What?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm wondering if your music is being used in any kind of mental health situations.
Oh, absolutely.
What's the effect?
Oh, that opens up a whole other conversation, a deep conversation. I have 6 albums that are approved by the American Psychological Association. Okay, these 6 albums have subliminal messages, or barely liminal, which means you can barely hear my voice with the message that's on it. The whole thing about mental health, to say that that is a work in progress, I'll give you an example of, you know, because the whole mental health thing, it's a gigantic conversation, because what we knew and understood of mental health 50 years ago compared to what we know now, it's ridiculous. So I have a friend who is, she does clearings. Like, let's say somebody's got a psychic attachment where, you know, an entity's attached themselves to them. And so she does clearings for people. And her very good friend told her that her sister had been in and out of mental institutions for 20 years for schizophrenia, because her sister had heard 6 voices in her head, 6 completely distinct voices in her head for 20 years. And so she went from one mental institution where they gave her drugs, then she went to another mental institution where they gave her drugs. After 20 years, she's gotten nowhere. She's in the same situation as she was in 20 years ago. So her friend hears that my friend Barbara does these things that are called clearings. It's like a psychic clearing. Okay? So she hires Barbara to do a clearing on her sister. Well, when Barbara does this therapeutic psychic therapy on her, Barbara can see that there are 6 entities that have been attached to her. 6 distinct souls that have attached themselves to this woman's sister. So Barbara sends each of those 6 souls to the light, and that woman never hears a voice in her head the rest of her life. That shows you how much the psychological world knows about spirituality. They don't know anything about it. Because if that woman went to for 20 years, every mental institution she could find, and nobody helped her.
During the meditation, you said, who do you see or something? I saw my husband, but I saw him like when we met, 25 years ago. And just wondering why that would happen when he's here with me. Like this man saw his mom, and that's what I can imagine.
Okay, so first of all, you don't have to worry. He's your soulmate.
What was the question?
She wanted to know how come she saw her husband on the boat if her husband is alive right here, right now. There's different reasons why we see our loved ones who are alive physically on the boat. That's one reason, because your souls are so connected, the same way that we can go up there, like we all went up to the boat, right? There are sometimes when people experience the same thing on the boat as other people in the group about things that I haven't said anything about. Like, can you imagine Jesus meeting 5 people on the boat and 5 individual people all sharing, yeah, Jesus showed me this Hebrew letter, and 4 other people in the audience shared the same thing. They're all alive in the physical, One of my friends is the biggest Beatles fan. She loves John Lennon. Like you can't believe, right? And so she came to an event in Philadelphia, and she said, I got to the boat and John Lennon helped me get up. And my brother Lonnie was there. My brother Lonnie is still alive. And John Lennon was showing us what John looked like when he was 20, when he was 25, when he was 30, at these different stages of his life. And she said it was just incredible, but I don't understand why my brother was there. My brother is still alive. So during the intermission, she went into the hallway and she called her brother Lonnie and she said, Lonnie, I just had a meditation with David Young and I was with you and John Lennon. I can't believe it. And her brother Lonnie said, that's odd. I was just thinking about being on a boat with John Lennon. I'm not making that up. I'm telling you that. So that should make you feel a little better. Okay.
Yeah, what, I listen to a lot of New Age. I started out listening to a lot of New Age music.
Can you guys hear him over there?
No.
No and yes at the same time.
No.
Repeat the question. Repeat the question.
Yeah. Oh, you want to do that?
We can't go into the audience, Marcia.
Oh, we can't?
No. Some experiences don't want to be identified or seen.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Well, I'll talk louder.
Okay.
I listen to a lot of
question.
I listen to a lot of New Age music, right?
Okay.
And so what I'm really attracted to, there's an artist, Andrew Gama, and he does the shamanic dream, right? And the low tones in that music and in a lot of the music I listen to really kind of puts me in a meditative state. And I just wondered if you had any comment about various octaves in those types.
Well, the lower tones, they more resonate over here in your heart and over here, where the higher sounds, that's why I hardly play this little one, during the meditations. Because it's so high, it's just, that's not relaxing, and the warmer sounds just really they're more comforting.
How would you interpret, like, when I got to the boat, I didn't see anyone, I didn't meet anyone,
Okay.
but I had a world of colors. So I had the very deep purple, and I had the very deep gold, and the white, and a rainbow. But I never saw anything but
Well, we all
colors.
experience spirit in different ways. Some people get messages, like words. They'll hear words in their head. Some people get a feeling. Some people will see things. There's all these different ways, and apparently that's the way that's most comfortable for you to see the color. Did you notice that the colors were moving with the music?
Yes, the colors did morph.
And did you notice how the colors and the music, it looked like whoever was in charge of the music was doing the color, and it was all like together?
Like a dance.
Yeah, like a dance. Did anybody else see that?
Yeah, I had that.
Yeah, that's this little button I have. No, I'm joking.
What is your new book about, and what can you buy it?
Oh, okay. Okay, so I started doing these events 4 years ago, and after about 6 months, when about 500 people had experiences with their grandmothers, their dads, their loved ones in heaven, something really weird happened. 3 people saw Jesus standing in the same spot in the room. And I grew up Jewish, so try to wrap your mind around that. And so I called up Bob Murray, who was that channeler who had been explaining why people are having all these experiences at my events. And I said, Bob, can you channel Jesus? Because 3 people saw him in the same spot. And I think we should have a talk. Because, you know, musicians are all a little bit self-centered, and what my mind was thinking was, if these 3 people saw him over there, that means he must have seen me over here, and that would look really good on my resume. I'm serious, you know, really. So I called up Bob, I said, can you connect me with Jesus so I could ask him why he came to the event last night, you know? I didn't see his name on the list of people who paid or anything, right? So Bob said, well, I can't guarantee it, but I can try. So there was a silence on the phone for about 2 minutes, and then he finally said, okay, I'm connected with Jesus, what do you want to ask him? My mind went blank, I couldn't think of anything to say, and all I could say was, man, this is weird. I never thought I'd be having a conversation with you, and being that I grew up in a Jewish family, this is just really weird. And he said, I can understand that. I grew up in a Jewish family. I mean, I swear to God, that's really what he said. That's the way he started my conversation with him, you know, which showed me that he had a sense of humor, which made him definitely more approachable, you know, even to a Jewish guy, you know, somebody who grew up Jewish. You know. So I said, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Because I don't know what to believe about what I've heard about you, because I grew up Jewish. And I also don't know what not to believe about what I've heard about you. So what do you like, or what don't you like? And he said, I don't like rituals. When people do rituals, they think they're getting closer to God, but a ritual is not done from love. It's not coming from the heart. It's a mechanical thing. When people do a ritual over and over again, they're not getting any closer to God. They're actually building a barrier between their soul and their goals of connecting with God, because it's not coming from the heart. At first I thought he was talking about the Catholic Church, but then the more I thought about it, every religion has rituals that people do over and over again. And the second thing he said is, I don't like pedestals. When people put others up on a high pedestal, the only thing you get is a stiff neck from looking up. I thought that was funny also. You know? And then the third thing he said, I could barely believe that he said this to me. He said, I did not create Christianity. Wow. Never thought I'd hear that. And the way this was all orchestrated in my life, I was sharing this with one of my friends a couple of weeks later. And this friend, after I said this, my friend said, I just finished reading a book that was supposedly channeled by Jesus, and those exact words were in the book. So in the last 4 years since that happened, 4 other people have had experiences with Jesus where he told them those exact things. And the reason why he shares these things with people is because he wants people to be able to validate each other's experience. You know what I mean? Because that's what I took it as a validation. You know? So, over the last 4 years, over 1,000 people have had an experience with either Jesus, Mary Magdalene, his wife, or Mother Mary. And my ex-girlfriend, who I lived with for 1.5 years, was an incredible channeler. Like, you know how easy it is for you to call up one of your friends on the phone? Well, that's how easy it was for Jesus or Mary Magdalene or John Lennon or George Harrison to talk to me. Because they could just give Mimi, my ex-girlfriend, the messages, and we would have conversations that were completely evidential. So there's channeling is one thing, but evidential channeling is on another level. Because evidential channeling means that there's evidence. Okay, and we love evidence, don't we? Right? So one of the messages that he gave me about 2 years ago from Mimi was, he said, there's big news coming out of the Vatican in Rome. And I'm thinking, are you sure that one's for me? You know, I never cared about what happened in the Vatican. You know, why would he give me that message? You know, and then the following week, the new Pope issues this statement that goes against the Bible, and the Pope said there is no hell out there. The only hell there is down here on earth, which completely goes against the Bible says, you know, and it was completely evidential because he gave that message a week before it came on to CNN, or Fox News if you prefer. So over the last couple of years, what's been happening is that they have been piecing together the puzzle of what happened in their life 2,000 years ago. Okay, now I have to tell you that I had no idea that I would be part of something like this. You know, I'm doing these events, you know, playing the flute, talking to people, explaining their experiences, you know. I had no idea this whole thing was gonna lead to this. But one of the things that has been happening over the last couple of years is that there are people who have come to my events who throughout their life had been having experiences with Jesus and Mary Magdalene, or with Mother Mary, where they are one of their children. And then they came to one of these events, and Jesus and Mary Magdalene or Mother Mary showed up to them and confirmed that they were one of their children. You know? And so here I am, traveling from city to city, making a living. You know, we all can make a living doing something. And I'm thinking that is like the goal. Well, the goal is for me to make a living and for people to have experiences when they come to the meditations, right? It's the give and take of life. But what I didn't realize is that they were sending me to all these different cities all over the United States to also connect people who were in their family 2,000 years ago and have been reincarnating now. And that's why they're continuing to have experiences with them. Because it's like your mom and dad from another lifetime. It was their mom and dad or their grandmother. You know, there was this one woman who consistently had experiences with Mother Mary where she's like a 5-year-old little girl, and Mother Mary is her mom. She thinks that Mother Mary is her mom. But what she found out was that Mother Mary was her grandmother. She was one of Jesus and Mary Magdalene's children. And what happened was that Jesus came back to Israel when he was 30 years old. Do you know why the missing years of his life start when he was 12? Anybody know? Okay, I'll give you a clue. What happens to every Jewish boy when he's 13? Right. So when you're 12, you start studying for your bar mitzvah. That's why they removed those years of his life, the missing years of his life when he was 12, because they didn't want to have his bar mitzvah in the Bible for Christianity, because they wanted to take out as much of his Jewish heritage as possible. Okay? So he comes back when he's 30 years old, and Mother Mary fixes him up with Mary Magdalene at a wedding. This is how it happened. Mary Magdalene's mom died when she was young. So Mother Mary became like an adopted mom, like a mentor for Mary Magdalene. So Jesus comes back from traveling. He studied at the mystery schools in Egypt. He studied in India, where they learned how to do bilocation, magic, and healing, and all kinds of stuff. And he studied at a Buddhist temple in India. In Tibet. And there's a movie out that you can all rent if you want called Jesus in India. And it talks about all of this stuff and how there was this scientist who went to Tibet and got the documentation from this Buddhist monastery that Jesus was a student at this Buddhist monastery. This doctor took this document and took it to the Vatican and said, hey, this is where Jesus was in the missing years of his life. And that document was never seen again. Because it really wouldn't look good for Christianity to find out that Jesus was a student of Buddhism. Okay? So, what happens is that when Mother Mary introduces Jesus and Mary Magdalene at this wedding, when he comes back when he's 30 years old, Jesus and Mary Magdalene find out they have a lot in common. Because when Mary Magdalene's mother died, she inherited a lot of money, which gave her the ability to travel to Egypt and study at the same mystery schools where Jesus has studied. And she also traveled to India and studied with the same gurus that were teaching the same things that Jesus learned when he was in India. How to do miracles and magic and herbology and all this stuff. So Jesus and Mary Magdalene had all this spiritual stuff in common. And so they got together, they got married, they had 3 children between the time he was 30 and 33 years old. When he was 33, that's when that terrible thing happened. And so what happened was Mary Magdalene figured a way how to get them to escape through a Roman soldier who was sympathetic to what was happening to Jesus, right? Okay, so without giving you the details of all that, they escaped on a wooden cart and a horse while Jesus was in a coma. Their 3 children were 1, 2, and 3 years old because that happened when he was 30 to 33 years old. Mother Mary took over guardianship of those 3 children, and those 3 children grew up, because what do you remember from when you were 2 years old? Because I don't remember anything from when I was 2 years old. So the only mother those 3 children remembered was Mother Mary. And that's why this woman who came to my event in Long Island, whose name is MJ, that's why ever since she's 5 years old, she's had dreams and spiritual experiences that Mother Mary is cooking for her in the kitchen when she's 5 years old. She thought Mother Mary was her mom her whole life, until a certain point when she finds out that Mother Mary was her grandmother, because Jesus and Mary Magdalene were her mother and father. But the only mother she ever remembered was Mother Mary, because once that terrible thing happened, Jesus and Mary Magdalene never saw their 3 children again, physically. But Jesus explained to me through Mimi, my ex-girlfriend, that they were able to connect on the astral plane with their children and with Mother Mary. So the same way that you were able to connect with your husband on the boat while he's alive, Jesus and Mary Magdalene were able to connect with their children and with Mother Mary while they were all still alive. So all of these things start becoming this tremendous puzzle in my life of what really happened. And that's this is my book. I just finished the book. It's called The True Story of Jesus and His Wife, Mary Magdalene. And the whole book is in color that has different paintings that I made. Like, for example, this painting is called The White River to the Golden Mountain. I made this painting 2 years ago. I didn't know why I made it. Because, when you have a bunch of colors and a blank canvas, you're just looking for something that looks good. And something starts to look good and you go with that, right? I named this painting, The White River to Gold Mountain, a year and a half before meeting my ex-girlfriend channels Jesus, and he said, we followed the river to get to France. They lived at the top of a mountain, in a cave at the top of this mountain in France. I named this The White River to the Gold Mountain before I even knew that they lived in a mountain, in a cave. There were 5 paintings that I did that were all 2 figures in a cave. I didn't know why I was making these 2 figures in a cave. And so this book, the ebook version of this book will be available in a month. These are advanced copies, because you see how it has like this coil binding, right? A regular binding on a book, you know what a regular binding looks like. Those books are going to be out in November. But these books, with this coil binding, I'm making 250 of these that are going to be signed and numbered. That'll have the coil binding, and they'll be, a little bit different than the mass-produced ones. So anyway, that's what this book is about. And this thing really took over my life. And over the last year. If I'm doing these events 4 times a week, sometimes I do 10 events in 14 days. On my days off, I don't want to be working on a book about the same thing that I'm dealing with like 4 days a week or at all these events, And so I really didn't want to put the time into making the book because I wanted to have a day off. I wanted to have a little time for myself, But sometimes I would do these events, and after the meditation, somebody would raise their hand. They would say, John Lennon just showed up to me and wants to ask you a question. He wants to know, when are you going to get working on that book? These are people who I didn't even know I was supposed to be working on this book. And a dozen people over the last year before I finished the book, I finished it over the last 3 months, a dozen people. I've said, hey, Jesus just showed up to me and wants to know, when are you going to get working on that book? I don't even know who this person is. How could they possibly know that I'm supposed to be working on a book? It's amazing. But one of the things that this book has that no other book has is that, you know what a QR code is? You scan it with your phone?
Yeah.
Well, this book has 12 QR codes, which link to 12 songs that are part of the soundtrack of the book. Okay? Now, when you read a book and then you go see the movie, everybody always says, oh, I read the book and the book was so much better. The reason why that is because the book is taking place in your imagination, which is more high-tech than any movie theater that you can go to. The other thing that the movie theater has in its benefit is that it has a soundtrack of music That's to enhance and embellish the story, to bring the emotion out in the story. Because if you see a movie that doesn't have a music soundtrack, that's called a shitty movie. You know what I mean? It's just, it doesn't move you, you know? So what this book has, it has the story of what happened, what really happened. Underneath the story, there's my paintings that are like posted underneath it, so it's almost like color therapy underneath the words. But you click on the QR code with your cell phone, and this is a piece of music that they told me to keep with that chapter. So you get a soundtrack of music. It's 12 songs from 12 different albums that comes with this here. Now, to give you an idea of how perfect the music was chosen, so there was this one chapter that was about them living in a cave, about Jesus and Mary Magdalene living in this cave. So, I need to tell the engineer what song to choose from my 60 albums that I recorded, you know. And I get this little piece of music in my head, and I said, all right, take this song from this album. This is it. The song they gave me was called The Hidden Reality. That's what they chose for the chapter about them living in that cave at the top of the mountain. The Hidden Reality. Unbelievable. So, anyway, that's what this is. If you want, I have business cards that are by my table with the CDs. You can take a business card, and these are going to be ready in about 2 weeks. These are going to be $65. They're hand signed and they're numbered, and these are the collector's edition. And then the regular ones are going to be $40, and those are going to come out in November. But thank you for asking that. So it didn't look like I was just trying to plug my book. Okay.
I'm interested in color vibration and sound vibration. How did you know that Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and Mother Mary are royal blue colors?
Well, I've done this 359 times. You know what I mean? And when I see them, they show up as this blue sparkle. When George and John show up to me, they have like this silvery colored sparkle. And so that's that royal blue. That's, I don't know.
Do you have a list in any of your books or on your website of the various famous people or historic people and the colors that you've seen?
I don't have a list of it. It's a good idea. I know when Buddha shows up to people, he uses this orange color, kind of like a monk would have that kind of orange color, you know. Lao Tzu uses this pinkish color. Saint Germain uses like this fiery red. It's like it's not really red. It's kind of like red with a little bit of more magenta than red, you know.
I see color auras, and you're copying the royal blue on your left side.
Well, that's because they're right over here then.
Yeah. And it moves with you, so that's interesting. Did anybody ever tell you that?
Well, we all come from the same family, right? Somebody else?
So, I mean, Jesus was never crucified then?
No, he was crucified. It lasted for 6 hours, and one of the things how it's explained in the book, there was a law in the Roman Empire that a Jewish person could not be tortured over a Jewish holiday. Okay? And so he was arrested on a Wednesday, and that terrible thing happened on Thursday. But Thursday night was the eve of Passover. Okay, so because a Jewish person could not be tortured over a Jewish holiday, that's why he was taken down off the cross after 6 hours. When he was taken down off the cross after 6 hours, he was in a coma, like anybody would be in a coma. And that's, you know, this Roman soldier let Mary Magdalene, his wife, and Mary Magdalene's sister Martha into the tomb each day to change the bandages on his hands and on his feet and on his rib. And on the third day, that Roman soldier brought this wooden cart, and the cart was covered by hay. And he took Jesus' body out of the tomb while he's in a coma, puts it in the center of the cart, covers up his body with hay. Mary Magdalene rides the horse, and that's how they escape.
Well, who started this Christianity?
Who started this Christianity thing? Okay, that's a good question. Well, the reason why this was such a big deal was because most of the people were pagans. The Hebrews were a very small group compared to millions and billions of people who were pagans. The Native Americans were pagans. The Celts and the Vikings were pagans. And what pagans believe is that there's a god of the sun and a god of the moon and gods for fertility, and there's all these different gods, right? And obviously, Jewish people only believe that there's one God. They don't believe in these different entities, okay? Now, there was no pagan Bible. So even though the Native Americans believed in a lot of the same things as the pagans in the Middle East, but one of the differences was that the pagans in the Middle East did not believe in an afterlife. They didn't believe in heaven. Where the Native American pagans, they believed in a happy hunting grounds. You know what I mean? And the Vikings believed in Valhalla. They believed in a heaven. Okay? So when, after 3 days after that terrible thing happened, when Jesus' body disappears, how do people make sense out of that? So the only thing that made any sense was that, you know, everybody knew he was a spiritual guy. Well, God must have taken him up to heaven. But we all know scientifically it's impossible for a human being to just disappear. And the reason why his Jewish buddies, who later became called the apostles, why, you know, they said God took him up to heaven, because that was the only thing that made any sense. Okay? And there are so many things that are in the Bible that are complete fabrications. One of the fabrications is that it says in the Bible that Jesus appeared to the apostles and said, I'm going to prepare a place for you, right? That's absolute fabricated baloney, because he was on that cart, covered by the hay with Mary Magdalene pulling the horse. He wasn't dead. He wasn't going to prepare a place for anybody because he wasn't dead. Now the virgin birth was added to the Bible 381 years later. I mean, does everybody know that? Did everybody get the memo?
Chalcedon?
Well, it happened in the Council of Nicaea, because in 381 years after this whole thing happened, there were all of these fights and riots going on because some people believed that Jesus was born God, right? And other people believed he was born a man, but he became spiritual, he became godlike, and then God adopted him. No, that's the truth, okay? And so Emperor Constantine, this is a time when the Roman Empire is starting to fall apart, and now he's got this big problem because there's riots happening because people can't agree on this whole thing of, was Jesus a god or was he a man, right? And so they call a big meeting that's called the Council of Nicaea, because it happened in this by this lake, and it was called Nicaea. And they have all the bishops from all over the world have a meeting there. And they take a vote on, was Jesus born God or was he born a man? And there was only, there were 2 bishops and 1 priest. His name was Arius. And no matter what they said, they wouldn't agree, because the 2 priests and Arius believed that he was born a man and became godlike, and God adopted him eventually, and that's what they believed. And so they got exiled and lived out the rest of their lives believing that Jesus was a human being like us and he wasn't born God. Now the day that I was finishing this book, we had gotten all the information that we could find to put all of this into the book, to make sure it was completely clear. And the morning that we were going to finish all the editing of the book, I'm meditating. And this man with a gray beard appears to me in my meditation, and he has a hand like this, right? I have no idea who this guy is, right? So 2 hours later, we're putting together all the final things about the Council of Nicaea and Emperor Constantine and everything. We get everything together, and we find out there was this priest named Arius. And has anybody ever heard of Arianism? Well, that means that if you're a heretic, that's Arianism, because that's somebody who just doesn't agree with everything in Christianity, basically. So we find out this whole thing about how Arius, a priest at that time, just would not agree with everybody to say that he was born of God. He just didn't believe that at all. They exiled him and everything, and we found a picture of Arius. That was the man who appeared to me in my meditation 2 hours earlier. I don't know if you can see it, but can you see the guy with the gray beard, his hand up like this? That's the man who came into my meditation the day we were finishing this book. What will they think of this? I can't tell you how many times I said that.
There's on Channel 11 here in Chicago, PBS, had a special on back around Easter, that Holy Week was actually a 6-month period, because he was greeted when he came into town with pomegranates, which coincides with the Jewish holidays somewhat like Sukkot. And that holiday is 6 months from Passover. And they justified it by saying that all of the events that took place couldn't have possibly happened in a week, but they coincided with different power struggles within the Roman government to being a 6-month period. So that Holy Week was actually only 6 months. And
Holy cow.
so, I mean,
Oh, that's Hinduism.
do you follow, do you touch on any of that, or are you aware of that?
Well, he was talking about the 6 months, the Holy Week was actually 6 months. Everything has gotten so completely distorted. I don't think anybody in the history of this world has seen more weird stuff than Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and Mother Mary. Because, first of all, you have to understand, Israel is right next to Egypt. Okay? And for thousands of years before they were born, there was an Egyptian holiday that was called the birthday of Horus. You know, the eye of Horus, that Egyptian symbol, right? So Horus was like an Egyptian god, or maybe you would want to call him a saint, or an entity, or, you know what I mean? And Horus was born supposedly of a virgin birth also. Thousands of years before Jesus was born. Supposedly there was a special star that appeared in the sky the day he was born. And 3 wise men came to honor his birth, you know. Horus had 12 disciples. And so for thousands of years, all the Egyptians celebrated the birthday of Horus on December 25th.
Oh.
That's the truth. And it doesn't end over there. They had this, the pagans had this holiday that they celebrated in the first week in April. The way you would spell the name of this holiday was O-E-S-T-R-E. It's pronounced Easter. That was celebrated for thousands of years as a pagan holiday before Jesus was even born. Now, in the pagan holiday, there is a symbol that they have for this goddess, whose name is Easter. And her symbol is a bunny rabbit. A bunny rabbit. For real, I'm not making this stuff up, this is historical, you know?
So Holy Week could have been 6 months.
Could have been anything. Oh, they just, as Christianity became more popular because the church was basically, they called pagans devil worshippers. They would call them anything because it was competition. You know what I mean? And what a pagan is that 5-pointed star is nothing about the devil at all. It's about 5 elements. The sun and the moon and the wind and fire and water.
Yes, I want to go back to what you said about the Arian heresy,
Yeah.
which you were alluding to before. That's exactly right. Those people were exiled out, and they did have followers, as you know, but they were a minority, and you know they were a hated minority, as you know. And then I want to go
Well,
back.
not necessarily hated, because Arius, the reason why he was the only priest invited to this big council of Nicaea where everybody else was a bishop. And the reason why he was invited was because he was so loved, he had such a strong following. That concept, what you just said, that's what the church has fed people. Oh, heretics are bad and blah, 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 blah.
Oh, they weren't crashing and popular with everyone, let's put it that way.
Well, Arius was very popular.
I want to go back to what you said about Jesus' remark about his not starting Christianity. He did not, you know, that's quite correct. I'm sure you're aware of the Essene scrolls.
Yeah,
Scrolls
that was
were
like the
found
Jewish
in
mysticism.
Israel. They predate anything else that we know of quote-unquote Christian Bible, and, you know, they
Yeah,
have.
Mother Mary was involved in
Yeah,
this.
they have a lot of concepts
And
that are
Mary.
similar to things we see in Christianity, but they were way before that.
Of course.
We know that now that they've been translated from, you know, the Hebrew into.
Yeah, I mean, the Pope wears a yarmulke. That's why he wears a little cap. That's a yarmulke. That's a Jewish thing that you wear. It's hilarious. The more you know, I had a big argument with my mom because she was completely convinced that Mother Mary was Catholic. Now, have you ever met a Jewish person whose mother is not Jewish? That's what decides the religion of the child. And my mom would agree with me that Mother Mary was Jewish. I'm like, Mom, everybody knows Jesus was Jewish. If he's Jewish, his mom has to be Jewish. You know, I mean, isn't that so silly? You know? So everybody knows he was Jewish. Most people don't know his name. His real name was Yeshua. You know? And in order for a person to be a rabbi, because he was a rabbi, in order for a person to be a rabbi, you have to have two things first before you can become a rabbi. You have to have a wife, and you have to have children, or else you can't become a rabbi. So if he was a rabbi, he had a wife, and he had children.
I was going to say, you know, you referred to that period where, you know, they talk about the pagans, but shamanism was kind of the religion of the world at that time.
Yeah, because shamanism is part of paganism.
There's paganism all over the world.
Yeah. And paganism is not bad. The only reason why people think paganism is bad is because the Catholic Church said it was bad, because that was competition.
Well, they honored like the four directions.
Yeah, the whole thing.
East, west, wind, air.
Yeah. Okay, one more question over here.
So how long did Jesus live and why
He
is he
lived
so
to be-
quiet after that?
And why what?
Why was he so quiet? I mean, you don't hear about it.
Oh, well, there's good reason. He lived to be 72 years old, and because he was, he had 2 scars that showed that he was a criminal.
Oh.
You know, and so he had to live out the rest of his life in hiding. And Mary Magdalene had sewn gloves for him, so this way his scars would be hidden. But by the time he got to the ends of his life, those scars were pretty much gone.
I have to ask this. What do you know about the extraterrestrials? Because they have been around for millions of years, flying saucers, aliens, galaxies.
What do I know about extraterrestrials? Well, I'll tell you that all this stuff, I never thought I'd be talking about any of this stuff. You know, like 5 years ago, if you would have showed me a video of what I'm talking about with you today, 5 years ago, I would say, I'm sorry, I don't take those kind of drugs. You know what I mean? I couldn't even imagine it. You know, but what about the extraterrestrials? Well, there are beings from other planets that have intelligence, and they're a lot more intelligent than most humans are. You know, and if you know, there's a lot of incredible things you can see through science, because they show the, you know, the Neanderthal man, the caveman, and, you know, we were going from here, like little steps over hundreds of thousands of years, and all of a sudden, boom, we're standing it up, you know what I mean? We don't have hair all over the, you know what I mean? Something happened. The scientists completely believe that we couldn't be going from these tiny little ape-man stages and all of a sudden end up like us. You know, and what I think personally, I think that the reason why the pyramids, those pyramids were not necessarily built by us. Because we don't have the technology to build stuff like that. We don't have the technology now to build it. You know what I mean? And those things were built 11,000 or 12,000 years ago. Now, one of the reasons why they won't allow, you know what carbon dating is, where they can figure out exactly how old something is, that they won't allow carbon dating to be done on the pyramids, because Egypt is a Muslim country. And in the Muslim Bible, time started 7,000 years ago. They don't want to disprove their own Bible by having carbon dating done and proving that those pyramids are 12,000 years old. That means that their Bible is a lie. You know what I'm saying? But we definitely, I just actually performed at the UFO conference for MUFON, and the guy who was in that movie Fire in the Sky, he got taken up on a UFO for 3 days, and you know, and he lived to tell about it. You know, that was really, really impressive. And there are definitely beings on other planets, and these beings have higher intelligence than what we have, without a doubt. Okay, one last question.
Who gave you the age 72 for his death? Caught my attention because it's like Arabic or measures are in 12s and dozens, you know. All
Sure. Well, Jesus told me that through Mimi, my ex-girlfriend. She was an amazing channeler. I mean, my book is about all these things that she channeled. Like, for example, she was given this image of her being under the cross, and she said that the sky turned this ugly color gray, and it was like you couldn't see the sun. And they gave her that vision. A couple of months later, I did some research to find out that Sir Isaac Newton, the famous mathematician, had done the numbers of figuring out when it actually happened. And it actually happened on April 3rd. And there was an eclipse on April 3rd, 2,000 years ago. That's why Mimi was seeing that you couldn't see the sun and the sky turned that gray color. And she had no idea that there was an eclipse. I found it out months later. And an interesting thing is that April 3rd, I met Mimi 2 years earlier on April 3rd. And I married my previous ex-wife on April 3rd. So if that doesn't give you the chills, I don't know what's going to give you the chills. Okay, so it's 25 minutes to 5. We have 25 minutes left for us to do another meditation. So, ready? So I'm not going to be doing a whole guided thing with this like we did in the first meditation, okay? It's mainly going to be the music. So just allow yourself to relax and allow yourself to just go with the flow. And if I get inspired to say something, I will. So close your eyes. Take a couple of deep breaths. We have 5 minutes left for some conversation or questions or anything. Okay.
What is the purple?
What is the purple light?
You see the purple, what is that?
It's just one of the colors of heaven. There's a vast region that has that purple color.
I just wanted to say I came here expecting to hear some really beautiful music, and you are so multifaceted that I could spend like a month on a mountain listening to your stories.
I'm the guy who plays 2 flutes, the guy who wore the puffy shirt, and the guy with all the stories. That's the Thank you.
Do you talk about the different levels of heaven, what it's like in the afterlife in your book? You seem to know enough about it, so you write
Well, I've been meditating for like 34 years or something. You know what? You don't really need to read about that. You just need experience. You know what I mean? And one of the things that I found in meditation, after meditating all this time, is that like the first 5 minutes that's a warm-up. That doesn't even count because your mind is so used to moving all the time. You know, that's not even the appetizer. You know, and I found that after you meditate for 15 minutes, there's more space in between your thoughts, right? And in that space, that's when we can receive, whether it's a message or a vision or something, you know. And then if I stayed in my meditation for 25 or 30 minutes, I would experience a deeper level of peace. But if I stayed in for 45 minutes, it was so much more powerful than what it was even at 25 minutes. And one of the unique things that happened that's in the book, I was in Sedona with Mimi when we were together, and I went into meditation. I just didn't want to come out. And I stayed in meditation for 3 hours. And when I experienced these 5 different parts of my enlightenment in that meditation. And when I ended the meditation, Mimi said, Mother Mary's here, and she wants to tell you this, 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 and this. All 5 things that I just experienced over 3 hours. She told me all 5 of them. You know, so the deeper, the longer you stay into meditation, I'll tell you, all of the yogis and the ascended masters, they all spent time in deep meditation that was longer than for 15, 20 minutes. You know, because you get into those higher states of consciousness when your mind, it's like your mind, after 20 minutes of meditation, your mind's like, well, I'm not in charge here anymore, so I guess I can go take a rest. You know, and the longer you stay in that, the more you can receive when you get to those higher levels.
Which of your CDs, I have some of your CDs from way back. Which are best to start meditating with?
Well, on my table over here, there's 3 in the front, and the 3 in the bottom row in the front, those are the ones that I normally tell people to meditate with first, because they're the deepest ones. Okay?
Does Judaism still play any part in your life? Are you observing something?
Not in my account, but you know, Jesus and Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene, they're all about their culture. That's their culture. You know, and they always would make things manifest. You know, through Mimi, like for us to like celebrate Jewish holidays. I'm like, really? Do we really have to do that? You know, which I think is kind of fun. I mean, I just really, when I was 13, I was bar mitzvahed, and when I was done with that, I just wanted to be done with it. You know. Okay.
How old is the fetus when the soul inhabits the body?
He wants to know how old is the fetus when the soul inhabits the body. Oh, that is such a big, big question. Let me tell you something that I learned from these events. That's my way of like avoiding that question and answering it. Okay, so probably 100 people have shared that when they got to the boat, the soul that would have been their child if they had kept the pregnancy showed up to them on the boat. Okay, and so when there's a connection like that through a fetus, whether that soul is born through the body or not, that soul that was connected to that fetus stays connected to us for like forever. You know, and it's not like they have hard feelings. It's just, that's just the way their destiny went. And it's only love. You know, there was a guy who shared that he got to the ladder and his ex-girlfriend had an abortion, and the soul that would have been in that body was there, met him there, and it was beautiful. That may be a difficult thing to wrap our minds around, but, you know, I've heard this enough times, about 100 times, so I know it's real.
I can add a PS to that.
Okay.
Echo Bodine in particular, but others have as well said that they observed the soul going into the body at birth. That most souls don't take the trip through the pregnancy, but some go in, especially younger souls go in and out during the pregnancy, but most do not. But what I've learned from my experiences over these years is that there is no one way to do anything. So there's many different ways to have that accomplished, as there are souls in the universe.
The whole thing that we have is with this thing called judgment. They don't have judgment in heaven. It's just total acceptance. This thing that we think a judgment, we connect our judgment with our intelligence, right? Judgment doesn't exist like that.
I have an experience, some years ago, a couple decades.
This will be the last one because it's 5.
A couple of decades ago, I went and I sat with a famous psychic, I can't remember now so long ago what her name was. She had a TV show and a bunch of things then. But anyway, she had asked me about my son. You know, your son is here. And I have 2 daughters. I have no boys. But my wife has had 2 miscarriages. And my daughters used to always complain at that time about how I died. And so she said to me, your son is here. He says, you need to give him a name. And he wants you to know he likes the way you drive.
Yeah, you can't make that stuff up. You know? And the same way where a soul would have been connected to that family through a miscarriage, and that, you know, ended that thing right over there. The same way it happens with devotion. You know, it's the same thing. If you just have to look at it with no judgment, because has anybody seen the movie The Shack?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there's so much wisdom in that movie, The Shack, and I would really, really recommend, if you haven't seen that movie, rent it, and if you've seen it, rent it again, because it's really, it's really.
Just saying.
How come I feel like I've heard that before? Well, anyway, it's 5 o'clock, and Diane, thanks for having me again here. It was really a pleasure to come back and share my music and my stories and everything with you guys, and I hope to see you again.